What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to The Order, and it's time to rank the characters in Marvel's Midnight Suns. Having completed the game and dove into New Game Plus, completing missions on every difficulty level up through Ultimate 3, I felt it was time to finally sit down and rank all of the characters from least effective to safest to use and invest in. If you're diving into Midnight Suns for the first time or just looking for additional content and insight, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I've got videos highlighting everything from character breakdowns to full combat missions and more. Welcome to The Order, it's good to have you in here. Now, for this list, I'm going to be operating out of 4 separate categories. S tier being simply the best, then all-around great characters who can easily slide into a slot occupied by the S-tier characters, then good but flawed characters that require a bit more finesse to make work, and then finally the most problematic characters in the game. Let's start from the bottom. I've already done an entire video explaining why I think Wolverine is such a deeply flawed character, so I won't waste too much time repeating much of those same points here. But TLDR, he's really a master of none who can easily be replaced by just about any other character in the game. He's not a great tank, he's not a great damage dealer, he can do some solid debuffing but at the cost of attracting a lot of attention to himself. He's fared okay in missions where I've had him alongside someone like Captain America to allow Wolverine to operate as an off-tank, but there are just so many better options out there for you to choose from. He's comfortably down here in the problematic tier for me. Now, next to him, let's talk about Ghost Rider. I mentioned my displeasure with Robbie Reyes in the combat mission RNG video, but I'll elaborate more here. Ghost Rider's risk-reward playstyle, where many of his abilities have a negative cost to playing them, like taking damage with Lash or discarding the entire hand with Hellride, are just really annoying to have to deal with. That's the best way I can put it. He's just an annoying character to use because you have to constantly ensure that you are taking into consideration what that ability is going to do to Ghost Rider on top of what it's actually going to do to the enemy field. And on higher difficulties where the stakes are a bit higher, this makes him so hard to recommend using over characters who simply don't have this kind of play and pay combat style. Certainly there are mods that can help compensate for some of this, and his ability to create drops are a fun mechanic, but so many of his abilities are just not reliably useful, and it's why he's down here at the bottom of my list. Rounding out the problematic tier, Carol Danvers is the definition of problematic in Midnight Suns. Built as an offense-first tank, I prefer her over Wolverine because her high-end damage output once she's in her binary mode is pretty fantastic, and she's been able to dominate the end of certain missions for me because of it. But of course, there's one huge problem. Captain Marvel's binary mode really isn't sustainable at all at higher difficulty levels. She's simply unable to consistently build up the kind of block that Captain America can. Cards like Regroup are good for maybe one good hit of block damage. One big enemy turn focused on Carol will immediately knock her out of binary, and without that, her actual abilities sans binary are just not that great. I don't like her basic attack cards at all, and her passive is a legit contender for worst in the game. A 20% chance to gain counter on a KO. The situationalness of this is off the charts. The percentage chance of her gaining the counter is so low, and then she actually has to be taunting enemies on that turn for the counter to matter. Like, I can sit there and talk about how bad this is for days. But yeah, you get the picture. Captain Marvel is just not very effective. Moving on to the good but flawed tier, Nico has some seriously strong support and damage abilities that make her really fun to use. The big problem with those skills is you have no earthly idea whether or not they are the kind of support and damage you actually need. Take for example Blood Magic. This card tells you everything you need to know about Nico as a character. The ability to give a character strengthen, lifesteal, or counter sounds amazing, and you draw one of those characters' cards, I mean that's fantastic, but you can't choose which of those buffs you get, it's random. So what if it's early in the mission and I don't need lifesteal from Blood Magic? What use is giving counter to characters I don't want to attract too much enemy attention to anyway? This is the issue with Nico. Skills like Double Up and Empower are effective for bettering your entire hand, but you have to work around so much of the roulette nonsense with her character that it completely brings down her overall effectiveness. I still love running Nico, and she brings so much more to the table compared to the characters in the lower tier, but her flaws are obvious. Hulk is capital F fun in Midnight Suns. He's a mission-wrecking force of nature. The guy single-handedly can clear missions with his Worldbreaker skill, and his top-end damage with Rage maxed out is gross. I was really tempted to put him in the tier above because of this, but the flaws in Hulk's playstyle are strong. In order for him to hit those top-end damage numbers, you have to build up his rage meter, which requires him getting hit a number of times from enemies. The issue here being that Hulk has no reliable way within his deck to build block or lifesteal, so if you're playing on, say, Ultimate 3, you can easily get Hulk killed on one enemy turn. Always Angry is a good healing skill that'll give Hulk a crazy bit of overhealing if used at the right time, but it's going to cost you any of the rage you built up along the way. That's some Ghost Rider levels of yeah but syndrome. I do love the combination of using Smash and Mighty Blow for the stun damage synergy. It's one of my favorite combinations in the game, and like I said, Worldbreaker is up there for best legendary card in the game. Hulk is really good, but you've got to be immensely careful when trying to build his rage meter because he can get smashed just as easily as he can smash. Last in this tier is Scarlet Witch, who I actually like quite a bit. She's got a few of my favorite cards in the game, like Quick Toss, a quick knockback in any direction, which outclasses almost every other quick in the game. And Chaos Field has become one of my favorite support skills in the game, with its ability to apply resist and healing to her teammates around her. But that is where the catch lies in with Wanda that becomes apparent when playing her more. Positioning is everything with Scarlet Witch, and reliably putting her in the right position for these skills and her AoE attacks to work properly is really tricky. Like with Chaos Field, you have to ensure that not only do you have the moves necessary to get everyone within Wanda's radius in order to apply those resist and healing, but you also have to be careful not to use skills from those characters that will put them outside of that radius after you may have burned your moves. Using Wanda requires a bit more finesse than other characters to get the most out of her. Her real big flaw, at least for me, is just the sheer situationalness of some of her AoE skills. If situationalness is not an official word by the end of this video, I'm going to riot. Hex Field, for example, doesn't do a ton of damage, but the enemies have to be within Wanda's radius in order to be hit. This isn't a skill that Wanda can just target any area with. So if there are no enemies near her and this is in your hand, it's kind of a useless card. None of her abilities are doing obscenely high damage, making her more of a fill character than a primary damage dealer. And her passive, 25% chance to apply a debuff to enemies standing near Wanda. Again, say it with me now, this is super situational. Man, there are some really bad passives in this game. Okay, let's move up onto the next tier, and these are the characters who more or less can fill in for the three characters who make up the top tier. Blade, for example, is the best single target damage dealer not named the Hunter. While his passive operates at a low percentage, it's far less situational than most, as you've got a chance to apply bleed every time he attacks. Cards like Savage have a relatively low heroism cost, but are giving you excellent single target damage against enemies with block, perfect for missions where enemies are protecting key objectives. Reaper, when timed well, can absolutely devastate a high level enemy with the ability to consume all bleed for damage. Outside of not having anything with knockback, there's just good solid stuff here in Blade's deck. Blade got bumped up a bit in my mind when I literally had a mission that was going poorly during the story and found myself using Magik's reinforcement card to call in a hero, and that hero ended up being Blade, and he quite literally clutched out the mission by himself by applying bleeds. He's just so rock solid, and like I said, the best fill for the Hunter. Spider-Man was one of my most anticipated characters coming into the game, and I'd say he largely lived up to the hype for me. While he weakens a bit in the back half of the game due to other characters outpacing him with upgrades and mods, he's still an incredibly effective and efficient hero who can give you a wide variety of damage and utility with such little cost to the team overall. Being able to add moves with zero cost environmental attacks with Opportunist allows you to get a lot out of a turn, and his Infernal Spider legendary card is really good. Free Spider-Man cards allows you to do so much on a given turn, and this ability to free up card plays and still do things is why I love Spider-Man so much. Chain Strike only chaining on KO is probably my only real big gripe with his deck, but everything else here plays so well into one another. Up here is a severely underrated ability that applies good single target damage, AoE splash damage, and debuffs to everyone it touches, and with mods, this thing is a debuff machine. And while his passive's low percentage is a problem, he still gives you a zero cost environmental attack on his first use of one, which can prove clutch early in a mission. For fill damage next to heavier hitters, Spider-Man is a really strong pick. While I've referred to Magik as the queen of portals in previous videos, she's really the queen of knockbacks, and that's what makes her special. Being able to consistently knock back enemies into everything from drops, other enemies, teammates, and environmentals is easily one of the most efficient ways of doing damage in the game, and Magik has multiple ways of being able to do this, which earns her a place near the top of this list. While she's not doing a ton of single target damage outside of her kick ability, her consistent methods of knocking back enemies allows her to solve some really tricky situations, especially at higher difficulty levels where other characters can't reliably damage multiple targets. Magik also has some of the best bailout abilities in the game, like Banish's ability to yeet an enemy off the map for an entire turn and replace them with a drop, a clutch skill for dealing with an incredibly powerful unit, or her legendary ability which can effectively neuter an entire enemy turn with its taunt vulnerable counter mechanic. Queen of Portals, Queen of Knockback, Queen of Clutch, I love Magik. Her quick ability not having base damage on it is a negative, and once again her passive is just very so-so, but she's just one of those characters who is good from the beginning to the end of the game on every difficulty level. Lastly on this tier, let's talk about Iron Man, a character who early in the game just really doesn't work for me, but in the back half of the game becomes superior. Iron Man's redraw heavy playstyle is wildly selfish early on when you don't have very many ways of generating redraws to buff his cards or get them out of your hand. But once you begin obtaining upgraded cards and mods that add redraws, and after you get his passive that adds redraws itself, you start to unlock his full potential. Tony is a utility AoE monster. Air superiority is beastly, especially if you go super selfish and buff it multiple times with redraws. But skills like Mark Target, which add multiple stacks of vulnerable, become so essential on high level missions where softening up a supervillain or high health enemy becomes essential to clearing. I don't like that cards like Blast and Quick Blast require an additional redraw to get them out of your hand, but the effects they do add are at least very beneficial. At the end of the day, Tony brings so much to the table and slots in beautifully next to my top two characters, forming a mission-wrecking squad. Finally, let's talk about the top tier, who effectively make up the perfect trinity composition of damage, tank, support for me, and who I really think are the three safest characters to use and invest in Midnight Suns. Doctor Strange's benefits are largely pretty evident with just one look at his deck and abilities. Remember all those terrible passives I mentioned earlier? Compare them to Doctor Strange, who can add 2 points of heroism on any given turn at a 50% clip. That's just so much more reliable and useful than like every other passive in the game. But the hits don't stop there. Winds of Watum is an excellent quick with knockback. Vapors of Valtor is an S tier support card that can immediately get any member of your team out of the enemy team's eye and provide them with some healing. Agamotto's Gaze is really nice to have when setting up the next turn by granting an additional card play. Strange is simply giving you a bit of everything with virtually no weaknesses. Damage mitigation, you name it. And again, I can't stress this enough, that passive is simply impossible to overlook. I will often swap Strange with either Iron Man or Magik next to the final two characters on my list, but when the chips are down, I'm rolling with Strange for the sheer amount of things he brings to the table. Now, Captain America. I spent an entire video gushing over how good he is, and I recommend you check out my best tank character video on the specifics, but again, I'll give you the TLDR here. Cap is the best tank in Midnight Suns, and it's not even remotely close. Like, I'm all for objectivity, but I'm flabbergasted by anyone who feels like Wolverine or Captain Marvel or anyone else is better. Cap's ability to consistently generate block, taunt, everything, add more block, etc., etc. I could go on, but this guy is going to keep your team alive better than anyone else in Midnight Suns. And he comes with the added bonus of having the ability to consistently draw more cards into your hand, allowing you to cycle through your deck faster and get to your best cards quicker. Even on Ultimate 3, it's been near impossible for me to lose missions when I bring Cap because of how good he is at staying upright and deflecting enemy attention away from his teammates. While you don't necessarily need to play a Trinity comp or tank comp with the right utility skills and the ability to give out conceals or resist, but if you want to use a tank, guys, you are using Captain America, period, end of story. And finally, let's talk about the best character in the game, you. Yeah, the Hunter is ridiculous. Broken, OP, whatever term you want to use, the Hunter is the best character in Midnight Suns by design. While you can obviously rank and build different Hunters for each skill branch, I'm primarily describing the Hunter as a hybrid character built around single target damage, which they are the absolute best at, full stop. The Hunter's brokenness can be seen right from their passives, with one in particular fully charged that simply cannot be matched. On every single turn, the Hunter can either gain a point of heroism for the team or one stack of resist. Let me repeat that. On every single turn, the Hunter can gain a point of heroism or a stack of resist. Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous, guys. And what makes the Hunters so great is just the variety of ways in which you can build them up and synergize their abilities. I, for one, like to run 2 copies of Inspire for free heroics so I can isolate skills like Patience and Bladestorm with 0 heroism cost. The Hunter has quick cards that not only do strong base damage, but offer knockback or even cure, or strong attacks like Last Sight that can give conceal on KO, or Guarding Strike, which can add block if left in your hand, or dish out great damage when used. Seriously, the Hunter's deck is a library of absurdity. On ultimate difficulties, the combination of the Hunter, Captain America's tank prowess, and literally almost any other character, especially Doctor Strange, is just an incredibly difficult squad to outmatch, and it's why they sit atop my tier list. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my rankings. I would love to hear who you guys think are the best characters in Midnight Suns, and if you found this video helpful or insightful at all, be sure to hit it with a like and subscribe to the channel for more. Till next time, have a good one.